The Gebirgsjägers came down from Narvik like gods of war. Julius Ringel's 6th Mountain Division had crushed Norway in 18 days. They'd torn through the Maginot Line extensions when France's best couldn't hold. Brown mountain boots polished to mirror shine, steel helmets gleaming with Edelweiss badges. These were Papa Ringel's boys, men who scaled impossible cliffs under fire, who hauled 70-pound packs over 6,000-foot elevation changes without breaking stride. "You know me, my comrades, and I know you," Ringel barked to his assembled battalions. "Let come what may, I salute all of you with our battle cry. Hurrah, die Gams!" Obergefreiter Klaus Weber adjusted his pack and smiled. After Norway, the Mauser K98K felt light across his shoulders. His squad had trained on peaks where oxygen ran thin and avalanches buried the weak. Whatever waited in the Arctic, the Soviets would break like ice under hammers. The intelligence briefing suggested otherwise. Soviet light. Infantry carrying 90-pound rucksacks across Tundra without mechanized support. Their 45mm anti-tank guns couldn't penetrate 40mm of armor beyond 150 meters. Primitive weapons, desperate tactics, but the reports kept coming. Red Army troops crossing rivers in their underwear to seize bridges. Soldiers firing from burning buildings until the roofs collapsed on their heads. An entire SS battalion torn apart by nothing but submachine guns and field improvisation. General Edouard Dietl studied his maps of the Murmansk approach. "The landscape up there in the tundra," he muttered, "is just as it was after the creation. Nothing but rock and scree. Countless torrents, lakes, and fast-flowing rivers." Weber's squad leader dismissed it. "Russians can't fight in winter. Look what the Finns did to them." Summer brought fresh hell before they even made contact. Temperatures spiked to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Thick clouds of mosquitoes swarmed the German columns. Men trained for alpine warfare found themselves slogging through soupy swamps, where a full division advanced just 2 miles in a day. The 3rd Mountain Division's assault ground to nothing against stone and bog. The terrain wasn't an obstacle, it was a weapon, and the Soviets had been born into it. Senior Lieutenant Dmitry Volkov crouched in his forward observation post, watching the German mountain troops through captured Zeiss binoculars. These weren't stumbling conscripts. Their equipment gleamed. Their formations stayed tight under mortar fire. They moved like predators, but they didn't understand what they faced. Volkov had been born in Arkhangelsk. He'd learned to shoot in terrain where summer meant 3 months without darkness, and winter brought temperatures that froze spit before it hit snow. His men didn't need supply lines. They ate what the forest gave them. They drank from streams that would kill Germans with dysentery. When ammunition ran low, they used captured weapons. When those broke, they fought with entrenching tools and bayonets. The Germans expected warfare. Volkov's regiment was preparing to unleash something closer to a natural disaster. Weber raised his Mauser, range 200 meters, clean shot. Through the scope, the Russian's eyes met his. No fear, no exhaustion, something else entirely. Weber squeezed the trigger. The 7.9 2mm round punched through empty air. The man had vanished into landscape that appeared to offer no concealment. Except it did, to men who understood it. 3 weeks into the campaign, Weber's confidence cracked for the first time. A Soviet soldier emerged from a bog that the maps marked as uncrossable, uniform in tatters. The 90-pound pack still strapped to his back. Blood caked his hands from hauling equipment that would cripple normal men across terrain that broke horses. Weber stared through his scope. The man moved without stopping, without slowing. The Arctic wasn't his enemy, it was his ally. The Wehrmacht had trained supermen to fight in hell. They'd found men who called hell home. Then came the night the 6th SS Division Nord shattered. A hysterical Untersturmführer stumbled into Kirkenes at 0347 hours, 50 miles behind the front, screaming about Soviet T-34s breaking through, tank tracks in the permafrost, engine noise echoing off the tundra. The duty officer grabbed his field telephone and started ordering demolition charges for the bridge. There were no tanks. No Soviet armor existed within 80 kilometers of their position. Through his Zeiss binoculars, Weber watched the aftermath. SS troops stumbling through the Arctic scrub, equipment scattered across the frozen ground. The 75mm Gebirgsjäger 36 abandoned, its 8-pack load scattered like dice across the tundra. Men who had trained for mountain warfare, conditioned to carry 70-pound loads over 6,000-foot elevation changes, now fleeing from shadows in Arctic fog. From his position, Senior Lieutenant Alexei Volkov watched them go. The 45mm anti-tank gun beside him remained unfired. The crew stared in confusion. They had prepared for close-range engagement. Instead, the fascists were simply running. Volkov had seen panic before. At Khalkhin Gol, where Soviet tanks charged at 45 kilometers per hour into Japanese positions. But those were actual attacks. This was something different. The Germans had heard a supply truck backfire in the fog and mistook it for a tank gun. The enemy had learned to be incomprehensible. Now the Soviets owned that fear and knew how to use it. Wehrmacht soldiers across the northern sector began experiencing what their own medical corps termed Arctic neurosis. The 90-pound Soviet rucksacks they'd mocked suddenly seemed less absurd when their own Gebirgsjägers collapsed under 70-pound loads on 6,000-foot ridgelines. Hauptmann Hermann's diary entry from July put it plainly. The landscape itself fights us. Every shadow hides their snipers. Every sound means death. The 6th SS Division Nord never recovered its reputation. 50 miles of pure panic, all because someone heard a supply truck backfire. The naval infantry arrived and made everything worse. Streifentod. The word spread through German positions like infection. Striped death. The blue and white horizontal bands of Soviet naval shirts moved through smoke and rubble like something from a nightmare. These weren't regular Red Army conscripts. These were Black Sea Fleet Marines, and they fought with a fury that defied comprehension. Gefreiter Klaus Hoffmann crouched in what remained of a factory cellar in the district. His MG-42 had jammed after the third belt. Brass cases scattered across broken concrete. "They're coming again," his loader whispered. The first burst had come at 0630. Soviet 45mm guns dragged to within 150 meters of the apartment block, punching shells through brick like paper. Their drum. Magazines held 71 rounds of 7.62 Tokarev, designed to punch through winter clothing and Wehrmacht body armor at high velocity. But it was the men carrying them that broke German nerve, not the weapons. A Marine took 6 rounds center mass and kept advancing. His fuel tank ruptured, aviation gasoline mixing with thickened fuel. One spark and he became a walking torch. He kept walking. 40-meter arc of fire at over 1,000 degrees Celsius. The building's support beams began to sag and crack. As the roof collapsed, muzzle flashes continued from inside the wreckage, the distinctive rhythm of the PPSH. Even buried under tons of debris, the striped shirts kept firing. Hoffmann watched a Soviet gunner stumble from the flames, hair burned away, skin blackened, still working his rifle bolt. The Mosin Nagant was so hot the woodstock smoked with each shot. "They're not men anymore," Hoffmann breathed. From inside the inferno, Senior Sergeant Dmitry Volkov felt his hands blister on the gun's traverse wheel. The 45mm shell casing ejected smoking into the debris around his boots. His loader crawled through the flames with another round. Blood ran from Volkov's scalp where burning timber had struck him. "German panzers," he croaked. 200 meters. The Panzer IIIs crept forward. Volkov's gun could barely scratch their frontal armor at this range, but the sides were different, always the sides. Load armor piercing. His voice came as a whisper. The heat had seared his throat. The building shook as another section collapsed behind them. 6 crew became 2. 2 would become 1. The 1 would fire until the gun melted, or the ammunition cooked off, or the building buried them all. The Panzer shuddered. Smoke poured from its side armor. The crew bailed out running. Hoffman watched from across the rubble. The building groaned. The walls buckled inward. For 30 seconds, nothing moved in the smoke and flame. Then a figure emerged, blackened, uniform, burning, dragging a Tokarev pistol, walking toward the German line. Hoffman's rifle cracked. The figure dropped. But there would be another schoolhouse, another gun crew. The Wehrmacht had planned for soldiers. They faced something else entirely. The 90-pound rucksacks, the human torches, the striped death. The advance resumed. 2 kilometers gained, the cost already beyond calculation. In the Karelian forest, the hunters had become something else entirely. The 6th SS Division had cracked in open tundra. But the forest front had its own horror. It operated in silence. Finnish ghost snipers had taught the Red Army its first lessons in blood. Soviet officers had been so terrorized by Finnish cuckoos, sniping from trees, that Moscow ordered all rank insignia removed from uniforms. Colonels looked like privates. Generals wore enlisted greatcoats. The fear had been that total. Now the Soviets owned that terror and turned it on the Wehrmacht. Hauptmann Klaus Brenner adjusted his field glasses at the Petsamo perimeter. Nothing moved in the birch stands 400 meters out. His Gebirgsjägers had hauled their 70-pound packs over brutal terrain for this. Static defense against an enemy that refused to appear. The radio crackled. Sector 7, movement confirmed. Brenner swung his glasses left. Nothing. From 50 meters away, Senior Lieutenant Mikhail Volkov counted heartbeats. His 5-man group had covered 3 kilometers without breaking a twig. The German positions lay exposed below. The PPSH submachine guns slung across their backs could spit 900 rounds per minute. But noise meant death. Silence meant victory. Volkov's sniper put his first round through the radio operator's throat. The 7.6 2x54mm cartridge dropped the man without ceremony. The second shot found the machine gunner before his MG-42 could traverse. German return fire erupted in panic bursts. Their Mauser rounds chewed bark and empty air. Volkov's team had already shifted positions, moving like smoke through the birch groves. The Germans had lost track of where the shots came from. Brenner screamed coordinates into his handset. By the time he finished the sentence, Volkov's sappers had done their work. Shaped charges detonated simultaneously along the perimeter wire. Not the crude demolitions of 1941. Precise cuts that opened corridors for the next wave. The forest swallowed sound again. German voices called out positions to empty shadows. Through his scope, Volkov watched a Gefreiter's rifle barrel catch sunlight. Amateur mistake. The German was sighting on empty forest. Volkov had moved 3 times since his last shot. Brenner counted 8 men still breathing in his section. The Soviet sniper had fired once in 20 minutes. Patient. Somewhere in that wall of spruce and birch, a Red Army marksman waited with 37 confirmed kills in 6 weeks of winter warfare. The Germans never learned. They moved in patterns, talked too much, trusted their equipment over their instincts. The Mosin Nagant cycled smooth despite the cold. Soviet armorers understood Arctic warfare. They wrapped exhausted horses' hooves in canvas for river crossings. They packed 90-pound rucksacks across tundra that broke their opponents. They had become predators. Brenner never heard the second shot. The 150-grain bullet took him center mass. His rifle clattered on frozen stones. 7 men left. The forest watched, waited, smiled with invisible teeth. In the open country north of the Litsa River, the Finnish improvised a different kind of killing. Valho Reto found the Soviet 45mm anti-tank gun sitting abandoned in the tree line. Crew dead. Breach open. The weapon weighed 560 kilograms and could penetrate 30 millimeters of armor at 1,000 meters on a good day. 6 Tu-26 tanks crawled through the morning mist at 300 meters, their gasoline engines puttering like farm tractors. This wasn't a good day. Standard procedure called for direct fire through the telescopic sight. Reto had no sight. The optical rangefinder lay shattered beside a dead gunner. He peered through the open breach toward the muzzle. The bore became his sight picture. Crude, improvised, lethal. The first 45mm shell took the lead T-26 through the turret ring. The tank stopped dead. Orange flames licked from the driver's port. Gasoline fuel made Soviet tanks death traps. The crew never got out. Hauptmann Weber watched from his observation post 400 meters east. He had studied Soviet tactics for 3 years. He knew their manuals, their doctrine, their training sequences. This wasn't in any of them. The second T-26 tried to reverse. Too slow. Reto had already loaded another shell. The third tank exploded when the round found the ammunition compartment. Sparks showered the snow. The fourth tried. Flanking left, range down to 150 meters now. The shell tore through the turret ring. The Heneki slewed sideways into a pine tree. Weber grabbed his radio. Command, this is Observation Post 7. Single enemy soldier engaging armor company with captured anti-tank gun, employing unrecognized sighting technique. Static crackled. Repeat, 7. The Finn is sighting through the gun breach, using it like a telescopic sight. 6 tank kills confirmed. Long silence on the other end. Weber understood the pause. German doctrine assumed enemy adherence to their own field manuals. Predictable responses. Standard procedures. The Finns had thrown the books away. They killed with whatever worked. The 5th T-26 burned for 20 minutes. The 6th tried escaping through deep snow and got bogged down. Reto walked over with a magnetic mine, placed it carefully on the engine deck, and walked away. The explosion echoed through the forest. Weber lowered his binoculars. His training meant nothing here. The enemy refused to fight by rules. They improvised. They adapted. They killed with abandoned equipment and field expedient techniques no manual ever described. They're not following any rules we know, Weber told his adjutant. How do you counter an enemy who invents new ways to kill you? The adjutant had no answer, neither did Berlin. The Katyushas answered for them. They screamed overhead at 0347 hours, 8,200 rocket rounds per square kilometer. The mathematics of annihilation. Hauptmann Weber pressed his face into the frozen earth as the first salvo detonated. His bunker shook. Timber supports groaned. His third mountain company had survived Narvik, Crete, the Caucasus. This was different. The forests around their strong point reduced to waist-high stumps in the first 20 minutes, nothing left standing. The methodical destruction phase lasted 60 minutes, no respite, no pause between salvos, 97 tons of ordnance per strongpoint. The forest was gone, the trenches were gone, then silence. Weber raised his periscope. Through. The smoke shapes moved. Soviet assault troops advancing through the settling barrage. Impossible. The rounds were still falling. They're walking through their own fire, Muller's voice cracked beside him. The storm group emerged from the cordite haze. 5 men with PPSH submachine guns. 2 sappers carrying satchel charges. 1 sniper with a Mosin Nagant. They moved like ghosts through the devastation. 90-pound Arctic packs on their backs, stepping over their own dead without breaking stride. Senior Lieutenant Dmitry Volkov felt the heat from the last 122mm shells screaming past. His squad had done this before. Stalingrad, Kursk, Berlin. You learn to read artillery like weather. The trajectory angles, the whine frequency that meant safety or death. Behind him, Private Antonov carried his 90-pound rucksack without complaint. Arctic infantry. These Soviets had survived the Gulag, survived collectivization, survived the purges. Artillery was just noise. Volkov's PPSH chattered, the 71-round drum emptying in controlled bursts. The German positions ahead were shattered timber and broken stone, but inside those ruins, men still breathed. Weber watched the Soviet advance, methodical, relentless. His 75mm mountain gun lay in 8 scattered pieces, the crew dead or fled. The mountain artillery that had taken 4 men to disassemble now served as twisted metal grave markers. "Sir, we should withdraw," Muller said. Weber stared at the approaching figures. These weren't the panicked conscripts from 1941. Those men had advanced 2 miles daily through soupy swamps in 80-degree heat, mosquito clouds thick as smoke. Those men had been confident, arrogant, full of belief in German superiority. These men coming through the smoke were different. They moved like they owned the earth, like death was a familiar companion. His hands shook as he reached for the field telephone. The line was dead, cut by shrapnel, or abandoned by retreating signals. Personnel. The Gebirgsjägers were alone. Volkov's sniper took the shot from 400 meters. 1 German fell from the observation post. The satchel charges followed. Explosions finished what the artillery had begun. Weber heard his men breaking. Not the disciplined withdrawal of mountain troops. Psychological annihilation. They had watched the impossible. Men walking through fire that should have killed everything. Men carrying 90-pound loads across terrain that broke horses. Men advancing through their own barrage without flinching. The 97 tons of hell had done more than destroy bunkers. It had shattered the Wehrmacht's belief in its own invincibility. The 45mm gun materialized from the smoke. Weber knew its specs by heart. 30mm of penetration at 1,000 meters. Point blank required for anything serious. But serious didn't matter when your world had been reduced to waist-high stumps, and the secondary positions existed only on paper. Fall. "Back to secondary positions," came the crackling order. There were no secondary positions. Lieutenant Mikhail Petrov crouched behind his gun, hands shaking as he loaded another round. He had watched the Gebirgsjägers for 3 days through his field glasses. The best Germany had, now they were breaking. "Comrade Lieutenant, the fascists are running," his loader said. Petrov nodded. These weren't the same soldiers who had smashed through in 1941. Those men had been confident. These men were learning what the 24th Rifle Regiment had known since Stalingrad: how to die standing up. Weber chambered a round in his Kar 98, K 7.9 2mm Mauser. 5 rounds left. The Soviet sniper across the clearing had been putting rounds through anything that moved for the past hour. 1 shot, 1 kill. Always 1 shot. The peepish burst caught Weber's radio man center mass. 71 rounds of 7.6, 2 Tokarev at 700 rounds per minute. The man folded like paper. Weber ran. Behind him, the forest burned. Above him, Soviet rockets screamed at 50-kilometer intervals. Ahead of him lay nothing but tundra and the certainty that the Wehrmacht's mountain divisions in the Arctic were finished. From the Soviet side, Starshina Pavel Komarov saw different monsters than the ones German propaganda had promised. German mountain troops in field gray uniforms looked like corpses already, eyes hollow, hands shaking on their weapons. These were the men who had terrorized Europe? These walking skeletons who jumped at every rifle crack? Komarov's PPSH held 71 rounds in its drum. Rate of fire 900 rounds per minute. The German position was 150 meters away. He could smell their fear through the frozen air. "Move," he hissed to his demolition man. The German 105mm mountain howitzer behind the ridge had gone silent hours ago. 1.66 tons of steel broken into 4 loads for the NSU Kettenkrad. The half-track lay overturned in a crater. The Soviet 45mm gun had found its mark. Weber's radio squawked. Company headquarters wanted a situation report. What could he say? That elite mountain troops were hiding in holes while 5 Russians walked toward them like death itself. That the same men who had climbed the Caucasus peaks now froze at the sound of Katyusha rockets? The Soviet artillery preparation had lasted 2 hours and 35 minutes. The forest was gone. The trenches were gone. Only the fear remained. Komarov reached the wire. His sapper placed the charge. 15 seconds. The explosion came. Then the PPSH chatter. Then silence. Another German position eliminated. Obergefreiter Klaus Dietrich pressed his face against the frozen earth of the Litza front. His MG-42 hadn't fired in 6 hours. The belt feed kept jamming in the -40 temperatures. Through his Zeiss binoculars, he watched Soviet Marines advancing through the smoke, blue and white striped shirts visible against the snow. Streifentude, striped death. "They're carrying 90-pound packs," Dietrich whispered to his loader. "Through this terrain." The loader, barely 18, stared at the approaching figures. How is that possible? Senior Lieutenant Vasily Petrov led his storm group across the tundra that General Dietl had described as just as it was after the creation. 5 SMG gunners, 2 snipers, 1 Degtyaryov light machine gun, 3 sappers. They had been marching for 14 hours. The Germans ahead weren't the Wehrmacht that had smashed through the Ardennes. These mountain soldiers huddled in their positions like frightened children. Petrov could see their breath steaming from the firing ports. Fear had a smell in the Arctic, metallic, sharp. His radio man whispered, "Comrade Lieutenant, they're not even firing back." Petrov grunted. The 6th SS Division Nord had already broken. One hysterical NCO had run 50 miles to the rear, screaming about Soviet tank attacks that didn't exist now. The elite Gebirgsjägers were learning the same lesson. The mountains themselves had turned against the Wehrmacht. Back in the German bunker, Dietrich's company commander crawled over. Hauptmann Weber's hands shook as he lit a cigarette. "Orders from division," he said. "We hold until relieved." "When's relief coming?" Weber took a long drag, stared at the advancing striped shirts. No word. The MG-42 finally unjammed with a metallic click, but Dietrich didn't fire. The Soviets moved through terrain that killed horses carrying loads that would break pack mules, advancing through artillery that turned forests to stumps. They didn't stumble, they didn't slow. They moved like they had always been here and always would be. In the end, the math was simple. The Gebirgsjägers hauled 70-pound packs up 6,000-foot slopes. Soviet light infantry crossed the same terrain with 90 pounds strapped to their backs. The Germans trained on Bavarian peaks and alpine meadows. Their opponents had survived the Gulag, collectivization, purges, and 8-month winters, where getting lost meant freezing to death. The Wehrmacht brought discipline and precision to a place that devoured both. General Rendulig's radio signal crackled through on October 12, 1944. 4 words that ended the Wehrmacht's Arctic mythology. 36 Corps cannot attack because it is degenerate. Not destroyed, not depleted. Degenerate. The mountain troops who had conquered Crete and Norway now cowered in bunkers, while Soviet artillery delivered 97 tons of ordnance per strongpoint. The preparation lasted 2 hours and 35 minutes. Methodical destruction. 60 minutes of pure terror as Katyusha rockets turned granite outcrops into gravel and the forests into matchsticks. Weber watched the final Soviet advance through shattered binoculars. 5 men, 3 PPSH submachine guns, 2 satchel charges, no artillery support, no tanks, just 5 shadows moving through the birch, stumps toward positions that the map still showed as held. He tried to work his rifle bolt, frozen solid, hands numb inside mittens, temperature at -40 Fahrenheit. His breath formed ice crystals on his collar. Somewhere in that advancing line, a Siberian rifleman adjusted his 90-pound rucksack and kept walking. Frost formed on his breath. His Valenki boots crunched through snow that would freeze German blood in minutes. He had grown up hunting wolves in country exactly like this. His grandfather had taught him to read weather by the taste of the wind, to judge distance by sound clarity, to move through forest without telegraphing his position for kilometers. He had been doing this his entire life. The Wehrmacht arrived believing it had sent supermen into the wilderness. It found the wilderness already occupied by men who needed no mythology. Just the land they were born in, the cold they had always known, and the patience of hunters who understood that the prey always breaks before the predator does. The 75mm Gebirgsjäger 36 sat broken into 8 scattered pieces, too heavy, too slow, abandoned during yesterday's retreat. Weber clutched his Kar 98K 7 rounds. The bolt was sticky from Arctic moisture. Papa Ringel's words echoed somewhere distant, let come what may. Easy words from a general who wasn't watching his mountain elite dissolve into the permafrost. The PPSH burst caught Weber's last Radio Man center mass. 41 rounds of Tokarev ammunition. The man folded without a sound. Weber ran. In the sudden quiet that followed, the only sound was the steady crunch of Soviet boots advancing through the wreckage. The Wehrmacht's warrior mythology crumbled like permafrost in spring. What moved through the Arctic twilight wasn't an army following doctrine or officers following orders. It was something that had taken the worst the Soviet Union had endured, the terror, the starvation, the cold, the endless dying, and turned all of it into a fighting force the German military machine simply could not process, could not predict, could not stop. The mountains had learned to fear men who carried winter in their souls. If you enjoyed this story, hit subscribe for more World War II historical deep dives every week. Thanks for watching.